We have a 30-foot wall. It doesn't do much. They're climbing it, cutting it, coming right in.
We know we're always being watched, and so you kind of get used to it.
Voy a estudiar el inglés, quiero aprender el inglés y aparte trabajar.
Well, I think in the political arena they downplay it. If your party is for open borders, you don't want to expose the reality of what it is.
The drug cartels, the people that are bringing drugs into the country, they don't care what side of the aisle you are on. They just want to sell their product and make money.
Maintaining a good neighbor policy is essential for the prosperity for both states.
It's the perfect storm of a lot of civil strife going on around the world.
You can't have a border policy that just talks about sealing the border.
We live here, we're all seeing it, and we're all seeing different parts of it.
I don't like the idea of people dying in my backyard, and I don't see how any American could approve of that.
So right now you're being detained under suspicion of human smuggling. Who are all those people inside of your vehicle?
I work for the Criminal Interdiction Unit.
Brian Lomeli grew up 6 blocks from the U.S.-Mexico border at his grandmother's home in Douglas and remembers hearing migrants at doors and on rooftops.
It was an everyday occurrence in the early 2000s when you would hear them running on your rooftop and just see them walking down the alleyway or running down the alleyway. It's getting to that point again now.
KGUN 9 on your side was granted unprecedented access for the night patrol down East Highway 80.
The reason why we're doing that is it is a hot smuggling route.
We went along with Lomeli's teammate Chris Oletsky. The sheriff's office created the 5-person team in March 2022 due to the increase of illegal border crossers in the county. The deputies say they encounter 5 to 10 load vehicles a night compared to 1 to 2 cars a week 2.5 years ago.
So I'm Deputy Oletsky with Cochise County Sheriff's Office. The reason why I pulled you over today is we're in a posted 65-mile-per-hour zone and you're doing like 49, 50.
On the night of our ride-along, we encountered a man who said he was homeless from Tucson.
Okay, sir. Can you step out, please?
I've been on a ride-along with the Cochise County Sheriff's Office for less than an hour when we encountered a common scene here in the county. A car smuggling migrants. This scene has become all too familiar to the area and local law enforcement. He was driving a car with 5 migrants in the car without a driver's license.
So right now you're being detained under suspicion of human smuggling. Who are all those people inside of your vehicle?
He said he was approached by someone and asked to pick up the strangers. He was going to be paid after completing the drop-off and was given fentanyl before leaving for the pickup. Drivers are being recruited on social media or in person to pick up people in different areas of Cochise County after being targeted by the cartels. The price? $1,000 per person.
They're targeting who will listen and whoever they can get to come down. One case in particular, a younger-ish single mom just before Christmas said she made the choice to come down here and smuggle so she could afford Christmas gifts for her children.
Smuggling is a Class 2 felony in the state of Arizona, and the recent law now allows local law enforcement and counties to press charges against people who participate in smuggling. Growing up in Cochise County, Lomeli says seeing migrants becomes a part of everyday life, but locals should stay vigilant, especially at night. In Douglas with photographer Jordan Cullop, Alexis Ramanjulu, KGUN 9 on your side.
A large share of the border runs through Cochise County, and border issues that are a matter of debate in Washington are a matter of life for the ranchers here.
Well, in the last 30 years, Border Patrol's caught 500,000 people just on our ranch. And the statistics since Biden took office is in this 15-mile corridor is about 8,000 a month that they know of.
For your land.
Yes.
John Ladd's family has raised cattle on this stretch of the border since 1896. The border wall forms one edge of his 16,000 acres of ranch land.
We have a 30-foot wall, and the problem is it's a good tool, but when you don't have Border Patrol, manpower-wise, patrolling, it doesn't do much. They're climbing it, cutting it, coming right in.
He's seen how smugglers attack the wall with torches, saws, and sledgehammers.
As soon as they cut that angle iron, they just push it out and get 3 or 4 guys crawling through that hole. And then when they're done, they put it back in place. And it's really tough to see. So they can use it multiple times until Border Patrol finds it.
How fast can they do what you just described?
This is about 30 minutes.
And there are other methods. Ladd caught this view of a long ladder Mexican authorities seized on their side of the wall. Ladd says crossing through or over that wall makes it very clear to the people who do it they have crossed into the U.S. Then it's across his land to a smuggler's vehicle, up Highway 90 and onto I-10. Ladd says a smuggler ran this Border Patrol vehicle off the road. He says as people who just crossed move across the ranch, they may cut fences, disrupt his cattle, and make him fear for his family's safety. Sometimes the intruders are in danger, like this man Border Patrol treated for heat stroke. Ladd says border crossers have always been part of his life, but it wasn't always like this.
Growing up, there was always somebody, 2 or 3 guys a month would want to come work, and we always worked them. And we've sponsored 3 guys to be citizens, and the last one was in 1983. He said, I want to be an American. We sponsored him, employed him for a year. He learned English, took the Constitution test. By God, he's a citizen.
But life on the border changed from year to year and from one president to another.
After Reagan gave amnesty is when it started 200 or 300 a month. Everybody was going to come and get in line to get amnesty. And so ever since then, it's just gotten progressively worse. And, in the 95 to 05, they're catching 300 a day on us. And then when Trump got elected, it just stopped. And then even before Biden took office, it started back up again.
Many migrants making claims for asylum have been allowed into the U.S. Ladd says so many Border Patrol agents are managing migrants that there's not enough left to patrol. He says the Cochise County Sheriff's Special Border Unit has done a good job stopping drugs smuggled across his land. But he says he wants more Border Patrol, technology used to its full potential, existing immigration law enforced effectively, and maybe a guest worker program to allow people to come here legally, work for a fair wage, then go home. Craig Smith, KGUN 9 on your side.
Jim and Sue Chilton's ranch runs along the U.S.-Mexico border for about 5.5 miles. Most of it is next to this border wall until suddenly the wall stops. It becomes this 3-foot fence here. This is where the Chiltons say most people end up crossing over into the U.S. In fact, there are water jugs just on the other side, ready for the journey.
We started here in about 87, and there was no problem. There were people coming across, but they were just folks looking for a job.
But the Chiltons say that changed around 2008, when the Sinaloa drug cartel took over these borderlands outside of Arivaca, Arizona. Since then, foot traffic through their ranch has looked like this. Mostly men in camouflage and carpet shoes to conceal their tracks.
I have 5 cameras on 5 trails.
Jim tells me 2 to 5 years ago, those cameras caught roughly 250 people a year. Last year, 2,500 people in just 8 months.
I've been told by intelligence officers with the Border Patrol in this area about 20% are packing drugs. So that's 500 drug packers coming to my ranch. They're here to poison our people.
Southbounders are the guys who already dropped their load, headed back to get paid. They're going just as fast as they can.
We're taking these winding dirt roads 19 miles or so from the house to the border.
Out here, the surveillance goes both ways.
There are 10 bunkers over there.
Jim says he's seen people perched on top of the mountains to alert groups trying to sneak through the property.
We know we're always being watched, and so you kind of get used to it.
It became dangerous for me to be out there by myself. I have a little gun, but yeah, I'm also 80.
Jim has even seen some people armed on his property. Yet he still pipes water to 29 drinking fountains on the ranch.
Nobody needs to die in the desert, even if they're a drug packer. It's awful. I've had probably 35 people die on the ranch. It's a humanitarian crisis.
A crisis the Chiltons believe can be solved.
How it can be done is to finish the wall, put in the sensors, the fiber optic communications, and the electricity. Finish the wall, and then put the Border Patrol at the wall.
But what Jim and Sue hope for is much different than the reality they've had to accept.
I live with the idea that there are cartel scouts on our mountains, that hundreds of people are coming through my ranch, and that's just the way it is.
At the border, Ryan Fish, KGUN 9 on your side.
Migrants are being picked up in places like this, just off the side of the road, and Sheriff Daniels tells me this has become the new normal.
How often do you see that, people on the side of the road?
More than not.
It's an average day for the Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels on this ride-along with KGUN 9, seeing two migrants waiting for their promise to a new life.
You look at $2,500 a person from my county to Maricopa County to drive. What? That's per person. So get 3 or 4. See how lucrative that is to a young mind.
Drivers' ages can be anywhere from their 70s to as young as 13, with social media being the latest way to target teens online.
We know social media is the main platform to recruit, especially our young juveniles all the way into our adults. We know that.
These are real examples from the sheriff showing us Snapchats with offers to earn quick cash, promising the drivers a safe route. Sheriff Daniels says the posts are made by cartels with many young people biting the bait.
We have a 16-year-old in my jail right now for murder.
One incident that crosses his mind.
A 16-year-old kid, smuggler driver, fled from a deputy. The speeds were so reckless he disengaged because of community risk. 30 miles later, he went through a red light at deadly speeds and killed her. We had killed a mom that was going to her birthday party.
It usually starts off like this: driving too slow.
You're driving certainly under the speed limit in a fast lane.
Or too fast.
That's when these cars pull in, boom, boom, out of there.
Last year, out of more than 1,300 human smuggling incidents in Cochise County, 89 of those drivers were younger than 18 years old.
I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is the ugliest. And that's defined by the magnitude of the problem we're seeing.
It's every time he opens up a trunk. There's the anticipation that someone's inside.
They're treating people like cargo. The tragedies we see. I mean, 7-year-old stuck in the back of a car and cars going 100 some miles an hour and she's crying. Come see that a couple times and see what you see.
So every stop matters.
It's tough. It is. It's really tough to watch these young people, lives change over one bad decision. It is. And if I can stop that before they even pick up, I will.
In Cochise County, Faith Abercrombie, KGUN 9 on your side.
Narcotics and opioid seizures, we're way up there. We're very, very busy. The cartels stick to their area. Cartel south of here is very, very active at this time.
Yeah, and a lot of fentanyl.
Fentanyl has really, really increased, especially in the last year. I believe we're up over 168%. Take the last 24 hours, we had a large seizure in a passenger car. We had a good seizure in a commercial truck at the cargo dock here. And we also had a seizure in the rail environment in a train car. The other thing we're seeing a lot is body carriers. So both on the body and within the body.
You have an idea of how it's going down exactly?
Yeah, I think they're recruiting people up in Tucson, Phoenix, to come down and take back, a load. And most of the time on the internal body carriers, some meth, some heroin, but most of it is fentanyl tablets. And we're talking anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000, 2,200 pills at a time in a body cavity, or on the body. We've gotten up to 8, 9, 10 pounds.
Here in Pinal County, we're dozens of miles away from the U.S.-Mexico border. But I spoke with Sheriff Mark Lamb, who says that they're still dealing with those issues here.
They do that. They've got electrolyte. We are the last pass-through county before they make it into Maricopa County, Phoenix, and then who knows where from there. One thing that makes this different from, let's say, the border, actually on the border, is we're 50, 60, 70 miles into the country already.
Sheriff Mark Lamb and his department protect over 5,000 miles of Arizona.
We feel a strong responsibility to be that last line of defense to stop humans from being trafficked, especially humans being trafficked into slavery by the cartels.
My photographer Jim Falzer and I went to Pinal County to meet Sheriff Lamb. He showed me something called a loadout spot.
So we wake up every morning, we come out to areas like this, where early in the morning, you might have a group of 10, 20, 30 people here waiting to be picked up.
These are areas tucked away in Pinal County where migrants get picked up.
And we're pulling traffic stop after traffic stop after traffic stop every day of vehicles that they've hired, like I was mentioning to you, children. Our teenagers from the valley, American citizens, 16, 17 years old, people from out of state being paid by the cartels to come here and transport those people who came in illegally. And what we've seen over the last 2 years is an exponential increase in the amount of human trafficking and drug trafficking into this country, into our community, into Arizona, and into America.
He believes that many people don't know exactly what's happening at the border.
Well, I think in the political arena, they downplay it. If your party is for open borders, you don't want to expose the reality of what it is. I hear politicians talking about, us separating the kids from the parents, but the reality is they've caught over 130,000 unaccompanied minors last year.
When it comes to securing Arizona, Sheriff Lamb believes there needs to be more support from the government.
I'll always take more people, but I'll be honest with you, when it relates to border security, what you need is the federal government to do their job. The federal government, Congress, Senate, they've failed to pass common sense immigration laws. So it is broken. It is broken, and people are taking advantage of it, as the cartels are taking advantage of it. But in the end, the main factor, the feedback that we get from people that are trying to come into this country illegally, is the number one answer is because Joe Biden said I could come.
Sheriff Lamb created the Ghost Squad. It's a specially trained unit tasked with searching the desert for violent offenders.
There are really bad people out there too, and it's their job to make sure that those people are not taking advantage of other people, hurting other people. And that's my job. I may have to stop 9 good people to stop 1 bad person. And that's what my job, that's what the people elected me to do. And I'm sorry for the good people that get hung up in that. We have a process in place for them.
Sheriff Lamb strongly believes the last administration had policies in place to reduce the number of migrants crossing the border.
And I hope that we can work together bipartisan to come up with some solutions, and then also give our Border Patrol and CBP the ability to actually take care of the issue and protect our borders. We're out there every day trying to do the best we can to help Border Patrol and to stop humans from being trafficked and to stop drugs from being trafficked, especially fentanyl. And hopefully we'll save somebody's loved one tomorrow because we stopped that from getting in today.
Sheriff Lamb and his force saw a 450% increase in pursuits involving human smuggling, molding Pinal County into a difficult hurdle for migrants to overcome. In Pinal County, Tina Giuliano, KGUN 9 on your side.
everyone's asking you to process faster. We need to stop just processing faster, and we need to have serious consequences for people breaking our law.
Art Del Cueto is vice president of the National Border Patrol Council, a labor union that represents U.S. Border Patrol agents. He hears the frustration from agents being pulled from patrolling the border to instead process migrants. As the number of border crossings continue to rise, Del Cueto believes there are solutions that need to come from Washington.
You have to detain them. You have to have immigration judges and asylum officers down on the line. You need to look at these cases, and the individuals that do not qualify, you have to immediately expel them and send them back to their country.
The National Border Patrol Council has been highly critical of the Biden administration, pointing to the record number of migrant encounters at the southwest border since President Biden took office in January of 2021. But in April, Del Cueto welcomed a bipartisan group of lawmakers from Washington, led by Senator Kyrsten Sinema and Congressman Juan Ciscomani, to see the border firsthand.
The drug cartels, the people that are bringing drugs into the country, they don't care what side of the aisle you are on. They just want to sell their product and make money.
Del Cueto believes the cartels take advantage of gaps along the border left vacant as Border Patrol agents do administrative work. He says cartels use those gaps to smuggle in drugs and individuals looking to avoid detection.
Those are all things that are going to continue to affect this country for many, many years. There's a proper way to come in, there's an improper way to come in, but right now the only individuals that are taking advantage are the criminal element, the drug cartels, because they know where the gaps are being created.
The National Border Patrol Council represents some 18,000 Border Patrol agents and support personnel assigned to the U.S. Border Patrol. I asked Del Cueto what's the biggest frustration he hears from agents in the field.
They're out there in the middle of nowhere. They're putting their lives on the line. They're going through, tough terrain. They're going through the mountains, climbing, and then they apprehend a group that is trying to evade apprehension. And once they're apprehended, the first thing they say to you is asylum. Well, then why were you evading apprehension? So that, when you see that, the big picture from being around sometime, a lot of that is a distraction by the drug cartels because they're trying to get their product across, and they know this preoccupies the agents out on the desert.
The U.S.-Mexico border is nearly 2,000 miles long, with much of the land having an existing border wall or having a contract in place to build one. But it wasn't always that way. The first reported barrier was built in the early 1900s in between Nogales and Nogales, Sonora. The 6-foot-tall wire fence was built by the U.S. to deter cattle from crossing the border.
There was a 5-strand barbed wire fence. That's all it was. Like a cattle fence. All the way to Salsa de Peña Blanca and all the way going to Cochise. And actually we used to go across that fence because we used to go pick acorns when we were little, and then we would come back across the fence. Sometimes you wouldn't even recognize that there was a cattle fence for a ranch or it was the border. We did that as kids all the time. Everybody did that.
Fast forward to today, for several long stretches of land, you'll see steel fencing 30 feet tall installed during the Trump administration. So how do we get from blocking cattle to blocking out people? Border barriers started to become common in border towns throughout the century. During the George H. Bush administration, several miles of fencing was installed in 1993 along the San Diego-Tijuana border. And while Republicans have historically encouraged a border wall, Democratic leaders have also helped build the wall. President Bill Clinton even using Vietnam-era landing mat in the 90s used during the war to help helicopters land. And the border wall would only expand, with President Trump securing $1.6 billion from Congress in 2018, with plans to build and replace around 100 miles of border wall. Of course, over the next few years, that initiative to build a wall will become a legal battle and become highly politicized, ultimately leaving crews who are working along the border to halt work as millions of dollars of equipment sits along southern Arizona. But that wouldn't stop local leaders from stepping in. Then Arizona Governor Doug Ducey getting creative in 2022, using shipping containers to fill the gaps left at the border, only to be torn down in early 2023 as the government plans to contract new existing fencing along the border.
I think what we're going to see is more and more technology associated with the wall. So when we say the wall, I think of it more as a system. It's a system of a physical barrier, but a camera system, a sensor system, and then a response system. And I think those last three items are really where the focus is going to be, because the physical barrier is there.
For now, the state's taxpayers will spend about $76 million to remove the containers. Danelle Confair, KGUN 9 on your side.
When you look at national news and what some like to report, one side makes it seem like it's the end of the world. Another side may make it seem like there's nothing going on and everything's business as usual. The reality is that we live here, we're all seeing it, and we're all seeing different parts of it.
It's nuanced, it's subtle, it's complex. You can't have a border policy without security, but you can't have a border policy without humanitarian support. You can't have a border policy that just talks about sealing the border, but doesn't talk about fully staffing the border as it should be. So, yeah, there's subtleties and complexities all the way through it, but it's easier to do a tweet. It's easier to do Instagram.
The congressional districts of Raul Grijalva and Juan Ciscomani cover all of Arizona's border with Mexico. Grijalva's district reaches from central Tucson west across Pima County to Yuma. It includes all of the ports of entry and a large share of tribal land. Ciscomani's district includes eastern Pima County and runs across Cochise County towards New Mexico. It includes ranchers who feel especially hard-pressed by trespassers on their land.
They're seeing firsthand high-speed chases. They're seeing firsthand the cartel members that are crossing people, and people are literally suffering and dying in these regions. And we see it here in Pima County when you look at fentanyl and now being the leading cause of death among young people.
Both men worry about fentanyl, but say more of it is found at ports of entry than in backpacks and illegal desert crossings. The Republican and the Democrat both say President Biden should handle the border better.
From what I've seen from this administration and the Biden team, they haven't acknowledged the seriousness at the border right now.
I think a lot of pressure on the Biden administration because they also display this kind of schizophrenic response to the border. You know, enforcement and then humanitarian support back and forth, and that schizophrenia, which has plagued Democrat and Republican presidencies and administrations.
Grijalva wants to see Biden send more customs inspectors to the ports where they could stop drugs, but also provide more immigration officers to handle asylum claims. Both men say the border is such a huge, complex mix of people, policy, and politics that you'll never get agreement if you try to pass too much at once. That when solutions have been stalled for so long, smaller nudges have a better chance to get the ball rolling.
If we can do some pragmatic solutions, break the ice and no action, and then perhaps move toward a more comprehensive approach to deal with what is essentially a broken law and a broken strategy on the border.
Whenever you try to tackle this issue in a large, comprehensive way, you're going to peel off support, and it's going to be pretty hard to get through, especially as you mentioned a second ago with the politics of the day. So getting one bite at the apple at a time, I think it's a winning strategy.
One piece of the border issue both congressmen mentioned was the value of a guest worker program to allow workers to cross the border in a legal way to fill hard-to-fill jobs and help U.S. companies. Craig Smith, KGUN 9 on your side.
Meet Andrea Cordova and Julia Washer.
I've had some of the best 4 years of my life here.
Both are seniors at Nogales High School, except Andrea has a much longer commute to school.
I live in Mexico. I have to cross the border every day.
For the past 4 years, her mornings have started early.
My alarm goes off at 5 a.m. I shower, 5:30, and I have to be out of the house at 6. And I make it here like at 7:20.
Her afternoons aren't much different.
The way back is way shorter, I feel like 30 minutes, 40 maybe.
All to get an education on this side of the border.
The majority of our students are U.S. Residents. If they do commute, they do have to pay tuition to come over.
It's a commitment that comes with a price.
We receive money from the federal government, from the state for each student. And really what this does is it mirrors that. The students pay the fee for their education.
According to Andrea, her parents are paying $780 a month for her to attend school here in the U.S.
But I do feel like the education is way better here.
I think that their families too are really, really stress the importance of getting an education in the United States because they know how valuable it is.
Especially at a school like Nogales High.
When we look at our graduation rate of every year being at 95% or higher, the fact that we're an A school and we continue to push the limits in all of our academic programs.
Where students are pushed to new heights.
I'll be attending Stanford University on a full ride.
And dreams are achieved.
I'm planning on going to U of A.
So when I asked Andrea if the commute was worth it, she said yes.
Well, I really am grateful for the opportunity to live in a border state and be able to attend school here.
And when I asked if the money was worth it, she also said yes.
Anyone who wants to pursue it should definitely go for it. It is worth it. It's a lot of work, but it is definitely worth it.
So again, meet Andrea Cordova and Julia Washer. Both are seniors at Nogales High.
I can't thank the school enough for all the opportunities I've gotten here.
With two very different experiences in getting a diploma on this side of the border. In Nogales, Heidi Alaga, KGUN 9 on your side.
A shared past does not guarantee a shared future. While a map may tell the story of two states divided by an international border, political leaders and business leaders in Arizona and in Sonora, Mexico, say there is room to grow together by investing in new technologies. I'm sharing several conversations I've had with some influential figures who themselves are watching two governors navigate a regional economy.
I'm really proud of the work that the Arizona-Mexico Commission has done, for 64 years.
Back in March, businessman Jaime Chamberlain says he didn't take the news he'd been removed from the commission's board personally. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs cleaned the slate. Chamberlain says he's optimistic Hobbs can reassemble a board to leverage their rapport with Sonoran leaders, many who themselves have some kind of connection to current Governor Alfonso Durazo.
And that goes on, whatever administration that is. And I think that's the value of the Arizona-Mexico Commission, 64 years through many different administrations, going forward and looking at that continuity of relationships.
From Chamberlain's home base and warehouses in Nogales to a convention center room in Tucson, business leaders see a future that grows both Arizona and Sonora's economies. The key will be smoother trading, so both sides can each invest in new technologies.
Maintaining a good neighbor policy is essential for the prosperity for both states. Working together increase the opportunities for trade, investment, and infrastructure. It also strengthens the cultural and friendship ties that give our region its identity.
David Figueroa works in Phoenix as Governor Durazo and Sonora's representative. He says leaders look forward to putting the new Sonora State Sustainable Energy Plan into a higher gear. Already, there's a solar energy park in Puerto Peñasco, or Rocky Point, that Figueroa says can generate a gigawatt, 1,000 megawatts of energy, and their plan, he says, doesn't stop there.
Tenemos 5 más en proyección para instalarse. Entonces Sonora va a tener una gran capacidad de producción de energías limpias.
Figueroa says for the long term, the Sonora plan wants to spur electric vehicle production and keep supply lines with the U.S. strong. On the Arizona side, we're seeing the next stages of companies already investing billions of dollars to make critical semiconductor chips.
Es una enorme oportunidad. Y ahí es donde nos vamos a complementar. Sonora y Arizona tenemos que complementarnos para entender la lógica que decía en un principio de que tenemos que vernos como aliados, como región.
Chamberlain, for his part, sees that wave of reinvesting manufacturing in North America.
And even if they're relocating in the United States, there are some parts and some things that they do make in Mexico, so their proximity to the border is important. You see an explosion in Tucson manufacturing and companies coming in and headquartering, whether it's in Chandler, Casa Grande, Tucson.
And Nogales may offer a model for other border cities to follow. Chamberlain tells us with Border Patrol as partners in this project, distributors want to test an EV program where the trucks and qualified drivers can cross between checkpoints every day, several times a day without unnecessary delays, while also reducing their dependence on ever-increasing fossil fuel prices.
There are lots of drivers in Mexico that bring products to Nogales, Sonora who don't have a visa, So they drop them off with certain carriers that come back and forth multiple times during the day to bring in already completed manufactured goods or coming in to drop off produce.
Paul Fanny, el gobernador de Arizona, dijo, si la vida nos hizo vecinos, seamos buenos vecinos. Mira qué frase tan sencilla, pero al final de cuentas encuentras mucha lógica y sabiduría en ella.
Jose Sosaya, KGUN 9, on your side.
For the arriving migrants at Casa Alitas, it's the sound of relief and hope. With a wide range of migrants from all over the world, the shelter is looking to expand.
About 85% of these folks are hailing from points within Asia, particularly the region of India. So that's a dramatic shift for us away from Latin-based countries for folks.
With Pima County leasing half of a former call center for Casa Alitas' shelter, it still may not be enough. About 150 men are there, but shelter director Teresa Cavendish tells me that Tucson does not have the capacity to offer overnight shelter at the rate of migrants coming in each day.
We are helping them review their documents, making sure that they have all that they need from immigration, then assigning them to the right type of shelter based on their family demographic.
Once they finally get cleared to enter, they're automatically welcomed by these signs right here. And just across this wall is where they finally get to rest. For one migrant named Nelson, he fled his home country of Ecuador because he didn't feel safe. When asked what the month-long journey was like to get to Tucson, Nelson says he went 4 days without food or water. He tells me his main goal is to learn English and get a job. Cavendish says most people in the shelter don't stay too long.
It can be hours. It can be as many as 2 or 3 days.
Then sponsor families that are approved by federal immigration officials will act as temporary hosts ahead of asylum requests. Cavendish also says their goal is to help them meet their needs immediately with the help of local volunteers. Because for some, this is the first time they could be away from violence and insecurity. In Tucson, Brooke Chow, KGUN 9 on your side.
So if we take a look at the number of immigration cases that the Executive Office for Immigration finished over the past few years per month, there was actually a huge spike from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2022. So let's take a look at how many cases they finished in fiscal year 2021. You'll see that they only finished about 9,600 cases per month on average, but in fiscal year 2022, a very big jump. They finished just over 26,000 per month on average. But here's the surprise. Already in the first quarter of fiscal year 2023, they finished more cases per month than each of the previous 2 fiscal years, with just over 33,500 cases. And this is the graph that shows just how many cases they finished in each of the fiscal years. So you'll see that there's a very big jump from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2022, with that line trending up. And that's a difference of almost 200,000 cases. And many of those cases are being taken on by immigration lawyers. A local lawyer telling me he's been taking on more clients lately. I did also speak with a local migrant who came into the country legally, and he tells me the process can actually take a pretty long time.
Jorge Rivas always puts special attention to each of his dishes. For Rivas, today is just another day. He's glad he's working and living in America.
Being able to have a nice, comfortable home is so rewarding.
Growing up in El Salvador, he immigrated to the U.S. in 1984.
At that time, the United States was giving political asylum to people that came from El Salvador because of the Civil War.
It was a civil war that made becoming a U.S. citizen easier for Rivas.
You have to file applications, you have to file forms, you have to pay fees.
Fees adding up to about $500, but Rivas saying they were worth it.
What you can achieve being in the United States is so much more than what it costs.
And that cost, paying off 10 years later when he became a citizen. It was a pathway that led him to open Lunch Wagon Tacos Santa Catalina in 1996 and then Sammy's Mexican Grill in 2005.
Thank you, sir. Here's
Both are goals Rivas says would have been a lot harder if he had stayed in El Salvador.
Just because of the of the economy, the corruption, the system, it does not allow you to obtain what here in the United States is called the American dream.
But that American dream is getting a lot harder for people to achieve. Mo Goldman, an immigration lawyer in Tucson, says he's seeing a lot of immigration cases being delayed.
Longer than we've probably ever seen before.
He says that's because of the COVID-19 pandemic. He says it caused consulates to shut down, which is leading to a backup of applications.
Filed a petition.
And because of that, he's taking on more calls from clients, inquiries, and actual cases. But he says the backup is also being caused by more people trying to come to the U.S. from countries like Ukraine, Venezuela, Afghanistan, Cuba, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras.
It's the perfect storm of a lot of civil strife going on around the world.
As for the time it takes, Goldman says it usually took about 6 months for people to get a work permit and about a year to get a green card, but he says that's changing.
It's hard to give anyone any sort of estimate that would be even close to accurate.
For visas, he says it depends on which kind of visa, saying some can take up to a month to process.
That's not the end of the process. That's basically the beginning of the process.
That process, he says, taking at least another 6 months. And sometimes it takes even longer. Goldman saying he has sued the U.S. Department of State so they can process applications faster.
To basically force the government to do their job.
And it's people like Rivas who had to wait for years, who is hoping others can have the same chance he did.
So what is your message to people in your very same shoes that want to seek asylum or come into the country?
If they can come in legally, it's better because they're not going to suffer the consequences of so much danger.
But he says it's up to the U.S. government to pass more laws to improve the immigration process.
Passing laws so people come legally, being processed properly, know who's coming in before they cross the border.
And while he waits to see if that happens, he's just glad he had the chance so many others don't have.
I'm just so grateful to live in the United States of America.
Reporting in Tucson, Andrew Christensen, KGUN 9 on your side.
Since 2000, nearly 4,000 migrants have been found dead in southern Arizona, and 179 bodies were found in 2022. Many of those bodies remain unidentified, and one of them made it to this location where the Tucson Samaritans have placed a cross in their honor. For every cross is a ceremony for a body found.
His holy water is life, and this is something that they run out here in these harsh environments.
But not every body has been identified.
You know, out of the 4,000 people who have been found dead here, about 1/3 of them are unidentified.
Alvaro Anciso is the artist behind the crosses. He's determined to place a cross at every location a body has been found.
I have put about 1,500 crosses so far in 10 years. I work slow.
Every Tuesday, Anciso takes a trip to the southern Arizona desert to place his crosses, usually 2 to 3 at a time.
So these crosses that I put every week are sort of the story of my own life. You know, I came here as a migrant, so I decided to mark these locations, you know, where the American dream went bad for someone.
He places the first cross for the day in a remote area just outside of 3 Points. The man found was one of the few that has been identified.
So we have a name, Por Gilberto, 42 years of age.
And after all is set in stone, the Tucson Samaritan volunteers lay a rosary and pay their respects, leaving a piece of them with each rock they place. Then, they hike back to the drive to the GPS marker where the next body was found.
When a migrant is found dead out in the desert, the first thing that you do is you call 911. And 911 will send the deputy to pick up the remains to take them to the medical examiner. And part of the protocol for picking up remains is that they put a GPS mark where this person is found.
The Pima Pima County Medical Examiner's Office sends new information on migrant deaths monthly to the nonprofit Humane Borders. Humane Borders records that information on this map, showing locations where bodies have been found since 2000. Around 2000 is when the number of deaths increased significantly. Pima County Medical Examiner Dr. Greg Hess describes the increase by calendar year.
About 77 deaths in 2001, about 146 in 2002, and then ever since 2002 we've averaged maybe it's like 165 remains a year, and then clearly it's fluctuated over time.
In the 2021 federal fiscal year, that number reached its peak.
2021, we had a very busy June. It was very hot, very dry. 2022 is a little bit more moderate. We did get more rain last year. So really the biggest benchmark for the number of people dying, in my opinion, is weather related.
In an effort to save lives, the Tucson Samaritans set out water and other essentials along the border.
Somos Samaritanos! Humanitarian aid is never a crime. So we help people. We give them food, we give them water, and we try to not have them suffer. And if they want us to call Border Patrol, we do. And most of them do want you to call Border Patrol because they know they're going to die.
Buena suerte! Gail Kosarek witnesses what goes on at the border twice a week, seeing and talking with migrants who are looking for a lifeline.
Oh, where I found him along the side of the road, and his arms are covered with scratches. Now, he was from Guatemala, and he just wanted to be with his sister in the South, and he kept saying that he wanted to be with her, but he didn't have food, he didn't have water, he'd been left.
She remembers getting a friend on the phone to translate. He said he wanted her to call Border Patrol.
When he realized that his dreams were gone, he sat down in the back of the car and put his head on my shoulder and cried. And he was only 23, you know, and he just wanted to be with his family. He just had a sister and he wanted to be with her. And it was so heartbreaking to have him crying. And when the Border Patrol came and walked away with him, as he turned to leave, he took his rosary off and put it around my neck, and it made me cry.
She's seen a lot, from people crossing through openings to people climbing the wall. She says despite how hard it is to witness, she keeps going for a reason.
I don't like the idea of people dying in my backyard, and I don't see how any American could approve of that.
This desert is almost like a cemetery, and that's going to be my legacy in a way, you know. And this is a project that I will never finish. It's going to be incomplete because I don't have enough life in me to finish it. But that's okay because the idea was to sort of bring attention to the fact that people are dying out here in the desert. And no one really seems to know too much about what is happening. So now that we put a marker there, a marker that doesn't belong there because it's a man-made item in this beautiful landscape, but it has to be there in order to remind us that we have an immigration policy that doesn't work.
Reina Preciado, KGUN 9 on your side.